Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for coming. This talk is going to be talking about uncovering the ancient mound builders of North America through the use of open data and open source geospatial software. Now, this is really a hobby that my family and I have. And so I'm representing my family today, and hopefully it'll be fun for you. Now, I'll be showing a number of pictures we have taken, as well as hillshades derived from Lidar data. And what I'm planning on doing is basically giving you a brief overview of the mound building cultures. And we could take a lot of time on that, but we don't have it. But then we'll go on to what I was able to discover in using this open data, and then what I was able to do with it. Now, there's a good chance a number of you have never heard of the mound builders. And that is primarily due to political agendas in the mid-1800s with regards to the Native Americans. But this talk is to help represent those people that that once lived. And so the mound builders are so named because of the monumental earthworks that they created and the mounds that they built, starting around 3500 BC with Watson Break. You'll notice oval area. All along the edges are mounds. And this is our earliest site. Then around 1600 BC, at Poverty Point in Louisiana, we have and this is during the Archaic period. Here we can see concentric earthworks going around, and there's a large mound in the shape of a bird. Next we have the Dina culture in Miamisburg, Ohio. This dates to the early woodland period, and this particular mound is 280 feet in diameter and 70 feet high. My family's actually standing on the top of it. Then we have the Hopewell culture. This dates from roughly around 300 BC to 400 AD. And this particular site is the Hopewell Culture National Historic Park in Chillicothe, Ohio. Now, as a kid, my family used to go searching for petroglyphs and arrowheads and pottery and all those fun things. And so I was surprised when I first started looking at the museums with Hopewell artifacts, because the artifacts were much more sophisticated than what I saw with Indians of the Southwest. And so here is an axe that is made out of copper and a parrot that is made out of a copper sheet. And here we have a claw made out of mica, some necklaces out of pearls and copper beads. There's some other copper ornamentations here, and an effigy pipe in the bottom right-hand corner. And actually, some of their artwork is really quite beautiful, and I think at the time it would have been really beautiful. Now, the mound building culture ended with the Mississippian culture around 1600 AD. And here is Cahokia Mounds in Collinsville, Illinois. And it is actually the largest mound complex that exists today. And with Monk's Mound being the largest mound in existence. And this actually has a footprint that's larger than the pyramids of Giza. So some of these structures are really huge. Now, this just kind of summarizes three of the major mound building cultures and their timelines. And there are more, but these are the major ones that are relate to this talk. And where did they live? Well, approximately you have the Dina and the Hopewell in these locations. So they take in a pretty large area. Here's your Mississippian culture. Now, during the mid-1800s, there were two surveyors, Ephraim George Squire and Edwin Davis. And they went out through Ohio and the neighboring states and surveyed a lot of these sites for the Smithsonian. And it's actually good that they did, because most of these sites are now destroyed. And we just have the record that they produced in this publication, Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to take a look and see how many of these sites I could find using the Lidar derived hillshade data, and see if I could locate them. And so that's what I set out to do, and then it kind of expanded from there. So here are some of our sites in southern Ohio, and we'll start with the Serpent Mound. This is an effigy mound. Now, what an effigy mound is, it's a mound that's shaped in some form of an animal. And in this case, we have a serpent that is apparently in the process of swallowing an egg. And it was surveyed by Squire Davis in 1846. It is 1,348 feet long and 3 feet high. Here's a picture of it. They have a beautiful park, and there's a nice museum at the location. Now, here, has been mentioned earlier today, the U.S., the federal government, and various state governments are trying to modernize the 3D elevation inventory through Lidar acquisition. And on average, it looks like they're trying to shoot for about 1 meter per pixel resolution in this data. Some of the older stuff is in 2 meter. And the picture on the left is of the state of Ohio, and this comes from this inventory. Now, the picture on the right is a sample data set from applied imagery, and it's part of the GIS manual. And you'll notice it's a whole lot better than the one on the left. So even though we can see the Serpent Mound on the left, and I can find things like this, it would be nice. We can do a lot better if we really need to. Okay, Fort Hill, Ohio was surveyed by Squire Davis in 1846. And the thing I want you to notice, all along the outer edges, you have a mound. And that mound was built for protection. And it is takes in a hilltop that's 40 acres. And these mounds we call berms. And on top of that mound that surrounds the hilltop, there would have been a palisade or a wooden fence that completely surrounded it. And just imagine, these earthen walls were on the order of 6 to 15 feet high. And every so often, you will see a break in this. And this puzzled archaeologists for a while, but apparently there were basically towers erected in those locations. So it made a great site for fortification. Here's a picture that I tried to capture the steepness of the hill. That top is 500 to 600 feet off the valley floor. And there are springs on the top, so they had water, although you wouldn't really want to drink that. And here's the berm, here's the inner ditch that went along there. And the picture on the left is aerial imagery of the site, and the picture on the right is a hillshade derived from your Lidar elevation data. Now, if we zoom into it, you'll notice even today, all along the edge, you can see that berm of earth that goes around it. And, you know, this is one of the few sites that has been relatively unchanged since the 1800s. Now, Fort Ancient, I love Fort Ancient, Ohio. This is even larger fortified site. It is a 100-acre complex with 18,000 feet of earthen walls, 553,000 cubic yards of soil, and those walls get on the order of 20 feet high. imagine trying to accomplish this with primitive tools that they had back then. Just think about that. And I really like how it turned out in the hillshade here. And it's a full mile long, and I'm going to just zoom into the upper portion. And I have 3 pictures just to show you what some of these things look like. I've got an outer mound, a bank of the wall, and an inner mound. And here's a 75-foot in diameter outer mound. And here we have that first bank in the wall of the mound, and I'm standing there in the foreground. Then we've got a small rock mound on the inside. So it's a kind of a neat place. Now, the Hopewell Mound Group in Ohio is an important site. And it's because Mordecai Hopewell owned this property, and it just so happened that it was the first location that was officially excavated with this particular culture of people, and hence the name Hopewell came from the landowner of the property, and that's how we got the name of Hopewell. Most of this site has been destroyed. The mounds all in the center have been destroyed, and all we have is kind of upper part, the northern end. So here is the berm that goes around it, and here's the inner ditch. This was in the upper right-hand corner. Here I'm standing on top of the berm. Your ditch is off to the left. And here's all of those mounds in the center. Well, not really, because they were excavated and destroyed. But if we look at the hillshade, you can clearly see along the top, the ditch and the berm. And you can kind of see on the right-hand side, but you can also see right in the middle where the mounds used to be, and because they didn't quite completely level it to the surrounding field. Okay, once I looked for the sites that were well known, I started going after those that weren't really publicly known or not as well known. And this is the Hopeton earthworks. On the left we have the field that it's in, and on the right we have the hillshade of the site. And you'll notice we can still see it, but what was once 10 feet high walls are 3 feet high or less today. And once were 50 feet, now they're spread over 100 feet. I took Squire's survey and basically colored the portions that have been destroyed and the portions that are visible in the Lidar, and that's the result. So a good portion of this has been destroyed. Okay, this is Miami Fort. It is located in the mouth of the basically at the junction of the Great Miami River and the Ohio. And you can see it's still very visible in the Lidar data. Here's another site along the Great Miami River. Once again, you'll see there's an outer bank of earth that was around 6 feet high at the time. There is a place of entrance at the bottom, and the outer diameter of that is 150 feet across. And there's a lower mound that's 40 feet and 6 feet high. You can just barely make it out in the hillshade over here. And I have colored some of these to help you identify it. Cedar Banks earthwork, you have an inner mound and an outer ditch. I overlaid it onto the hillshade, and you can see it particularly this bottom end where part of it is. The mound is gone. Throughout Chillicothe, Ohio, there were earthworks and mounds everywhere. And this just shows the area. And once again, I colored them, the parts that are destroyed and the parts that are still visible. Now, what I want to caveat what I mean by destroyed. It means I cannot see it in the data. On the ground, there might be still some evidence, but it's just not sufficiently large to show up in the data. Here's another area along the Pink Creek, and there's a site that's important, the lower left. This is the Site Mound Complex, and it has a large central mound in the center. That mound is 240 feet long, 130 feet wide, and 30 feet high. And it is the second largest Hopewell mound. And once again, these complexes are huge. It takes in 121 acres, 10,000 feet of embankment walls, and that were originally 10 feet high. Here's what it looks like in the hillshade. You can see the large mound there and where the little cluster mounds. Today, what is left for the walls at most is around 3 feet high. And I'm not sure if those have been reconstructed or not. Now, I overlaid Squire's survey on top of this, and notice that central mound does not line up very well. There's two possibilities there. One, Squire did not survey it very accurately. Two, and I think this may be the reason it does not line up, is they completely excavated this mound. And I wonder if they just put the dirt next door. And so I've tried to ask the archaeologists in Ohio, but never got a response. Okay, in this mound there were literally tens of thousands of pearls. And here you have a breastplate with pearls on it, and a breastplate basically covered the more vital parts of the body, so they were used during war. On the bottom is a 28-pound axe. And oftentimes when you go into museums of the Native Americans, you'll see them scantily clad with loincloths made out of animal hide. But they had woven cloth. The Hopewell culture had woven cloth. It's rarely preserved, but if it's in contact with copper, the oxides and salts, copper salts help to preserve it. There's one more site that I want to show you in this area, and it's because of what Squire said. He said, the small work here figured is one of the most beautiful in the state of Ohio. It consists of a wall of earth 8 or 10 feet in height with a broad and shallow exterior ditch. It has a gateway 120 feet wide leading into it from the southwest. This work is admirably preserved and is remarkable as being the only circular work at present known which has its ditch exterior to the walls. Now, what does most beautiful and admirably preserved look like today? There it is. You see it? Well, here's the hillshade of the site, and you can vaguely see the outline. Today, that only is about a foot higher than the surrounding field. And it's actually a little sad, to me, that what was once one of the most beautiful sites is almost non-existent today. The Newark earthworks. This is, I've been told, the largest earthworks ever made. And we have some parts of this that have been remarkably preserved, and other parts that are completely destroyed. This is the Great Circle earthworks, and here we have the Octagon earthworks. And these are the pieces that exist today. This is the entryway to the Great Circle earthworks. And here I'm standing on the top. People use it as a jogging trail. And it's a beautiful site to go to. But just look how large the circle is. It's just massive. Here's a little section of the Octagon. Today it's a golf course. And once again, I have colored what has been preserved and what's been destroyed. Then I took Squire's survey and overlaid it onto the Lidar data, and I've colored the parts that have been preserved. Now, one of the things that I wasn't aware of when I did the overlay was there's actually a couple of small pieces. I'm sure the local people probably know about it, but I was able to find them in the hillshade. Now, I've taken the whole thing to give you a perspective of what the whole site looked like, and here we've overlaid it on the aerial imagery. Notice how small the house is. This complex was huge. Okay, so basically I went through a lot of these old publications like Squire, and I was able to find many of the sites. Some of them are really well preserved, like the ones on the left, although sometimes they're just a small piece of a bigger site that's been destroyed. In other cases, like on the lower left here, or lower right, there's just a ghost image that's in a field that's been farmed for over 100 years. And, basically I took that information and I actually put Squire's book online. And one of the things I've done is to augment the book with what does it look like today. And I've been incorporating some of these hillshades into it. Now, one other site that I want to show you before we leave Ohio is Flint Ridge. This was the most important flint quarry for the Native Americans. And there was literally hundreds of pits in this area where they mined flint. And, as you can see those little pieces, it's beautiful flint, and they made all kinds of tools. Here are several of the pits. There's a nice park there that you can go and walk through. And here's what it looks like in the hillshade. I'd wondered what it would look like. And here's the state park. And you'll notice that pockmark appearance. Those are all of those pits that had been mined. Now, when I got looking at this, I thought, these other areas have been mined as well. So the Lidar does help give some additional information. Okay, now I want to turn our attention to the Mississippi River and the tributaries and the bluffs that go along the rivers. And I like taking a look at the known sites first, and that gives me a sense for what I'm looking at, and then I look for the unknown. This is the Effigy Mounds National Monument. It's a beautiful site to go hiking in. And we'll just jump to some of the hillshades. There's literally hundreds of mounds in this area. There's long linear mounds. There's conical mounds. And I call these strings of pearls because they look like strings of pearls to me. And then there are effigy mounds, and in this case, we have a bear effigy. This site is enchanting to me. Here's one of the conical mounds. You got ferns growing out of it. Here's one of the long linear mounds. It was freshly mowed when I took the picture. And marching through the trees, we have the string of pearl-like mounds. We have a bear effigy, a bird effigy, a long linear mound. And marching across that hilltops are a number of bears. And also there are some other mounds. But what really surprised me as I was looking at this is all up and down the Mississippi, there are mounds everywhere along the bluffs. And this is just a small sampling of some of them. And this was a little gem. This is more or less island in the Mississippi. And what's on it? Well, there are literally 88 mounds that I counted. Now, I'm sure there's some more that's below the resolution of the data. But here are a couple birds, and there's a couple of four-legged creatures. So, it's kind of fun to see what you can find just by looking at the data. This is also along the Mississippi, the Malcow Mounds Preserve. The image on the left, I have no idea what that is. And I don't even know if it's ancient or modern. But on the right are 60 conical mounds. So, neat little site. Okay, so as I was searching for this data, I was using QGIS to record it into a database. And I had a couple of tables of verified sites and likely sites. I'd use publications like Squire's publication to search for the sites. I'd basically get the general location and look at the hillshade to see if I could locate them. And I also used just brute force scanning of the hillshade to see if I could locate him in likely locations, like up and down the Mississippi. And now one of the things that I had some issues with is I was jumping back and forth between Google Earth and Google Maps and my own map and QGIS, and QGIS kind of reverses the coordinates. So I wrote my own plugin so I could just seamlessly interact between them. Here's my map at scienceviews.com/lidar. I have a bunch of hill shaded data that I put on. You can see the layers on the right. The blue markers are the likely archaeological earthworks, and the others are the ones that I've verified. I just want to show you the upper two counties in Iowa, and there's literally hundreds of these strings of pearls along the banks of the Mississippi. Now, 3 states publish a hill shade derived from LIDAR data. But one of the problems with those hill shades is I'm using a Leaflet map with Web Mercator projection. They didn't publish it in Web Mercator. And they were also kind of unreliable and slow. So I used GeoServer to translate it into Web Mercator as well as cache it. And it really improved performance. For the other states, they publish their data county by county, and so I download that, use QGIS to create the hill shade. I would create a geotiff of each county, and then use GeoServer with a image mosaic data store to put it all together. Now, one of the problems I found is that when you're zoomed out, GeoServer has to go read every, if the user requests a tile that's a low resolution, GeoServer has to literally go read every geotiff and to create the image. So what I did is I used GDAL to create an overview image. So that's what is used when the user is requesting a low resolution image. And when you get zoomed in to a certain point, then it jumps to the individual county tiles, geotiffs. I have a number of shape files like counties and townships and land sections, and that I use those to help locate the old books, archaeological books, and locate them against the map. Then I'm using GeoJSON to feed my known archaeological sites into my Leaflet map. And that's the address of the map. So this summarizes the results of what I was able to find. The verified archaeological sites and the likely ones. Look in particular of Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin of the likely archaeological sites. Now I call them likely, but I'm probably 95+% accurate, because when you see pearls along the bluffs, you really can't mistake them for what they are. Now, just as kind of a final parting wish to you guys, as you look at imagery, you find some interesting features. And this is one of them, and I just wanted to thank you for coming, and want to open it up to questions. Yes?
Have you ever thought of doing a geomorphon analysis on the landscape to try to pull out the different peaks and ridges, maybe make things stand out a little bit?
Geomorph on landscape. There's a lot of things I could do, but this has just been a hobby, and so it's just whatever I can do in the free time. I've thought, I have a background in image processing, and I've had other ideas of what I could do, but I just haven't. Any other question? Yes? Yeah, this is an interesting question, And I've kind of struggled as what I should do with this information, because on one hand, most of the states, there's really no law of, or they're not protected. And as I've mentioned to a couple of people, in some instances, even the archaeologists have been the ones to destroy these sites during their excavations. But in some cases, it'd be nice if these were protected. There's a number of landowners that they personally are taking them into their own protection. But most of them on the site probably are not protected, except for the well-known sites. Was there time for another question?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So how long have you been doing this?
Actually, I've been interested in the Native Americans since I was a kid. But this I've been doing for the last year and a half or two, something like that.
A lot of work in that time.
Yeah. But we've traveled and explored these sites for a number of years, even before I started doing this. Any others? Okay. Thank you.